Oh man, I don't know. I'd be so embarrassed. Anyway, our senses allow us to detect physical changes around us and perceive the nature of our world. For sight, that begins with retina detecting light, but actually seeing a car speeding towards us requires the brain to receive signals from the retina and to process it quickly. Perceiving that the car is green is a result of the brain processing signals from sensory cells in the eye capable of detecting just 3 primary colors. Centuries of experimentation culminating in a 1965 experiment demonstrated the role of cone cells in color vision. As a result, scientists thought that, similar to how we see, smell-detecting olfactory neurons might pick up a few primary odors that the brain then turns into a vast number of odors that we detect. It took a technological breakthrough to prove that assumption wrong. In the late 1980s, polymerase chain reactions, PCRs, revolutionized molecular biology by providing a way to replicate small amounts of genetic material in order to study them. Richard Axel and Linda Buck employed PCR to hunt for odorant receptors. They reasoned odorant receptors might belong to a large, diverse family of receptor proteins found in other tissues of the body, but they looked for such proteins only in the sensory neurons in the nose. Axel and Buck scanned the genetic material contained in the rat's olfactory neurons, looking for sequences similar to those encoding the receptor family. In 1991, they isolated 18 unique receptor genes that were the members of this family, but only found in olfactory sensor neurons. Those 18 were the first of what turned out to be more than 1,000 genes in rodents encoding smell sensors, more commonly referred today as olfactory receptors. For their work, Axel and Buck were rewarded with the 2004 Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. Deeper knowledge. With olfactory receptors in hand, researchers around the world began the work of understanding how we can discern the difference between remarkably similar odor molecules. By 2002, they established the receptors represented by a superfamily of more than 1,000 individual proteins. Still, those numbers don't account for all of the smells in our world if each receptor detected only one particular odor. By 1999, the scientific community knew that each receptor could in fact detect multiple molecules differing from one another only slightly. That ability greatly increased the number of detectable odors, but not enough to fully account for our ability to smell many different odors. The discovery that the individual receptors can respond to many different molecules was the key to understanding how a limited number of receptors allow us to detect and discern a vast number of odors. What's more, given an odor molecule activates multiple olfactory receptors. Any given odor molecule activates multiple olfactory receptors. Perceiving smell begins with olfactory receptors in the nose and ends in the brain. Each smell activates a specific combination of olfactory neurons, which the brain decodes as a particular aroma. This combination coding allows us to detect many more smells than we have specific receptors for. Each of the chemical odorants trigger their own unique pattern of neural activity, leading our perception to a particular smell. Buck, Axel, and others went on... What others? Tell me who. Went on to study the organization of sensory neurons in the olfactory epithelium, the nervous tissue inside of the nose, which helps describe the information flow from the nose to the brain. They described how sensory neurons communicate with their targets, neurons in a brain structure called the olfactory bulb, and how information is passed along to higher relay stations like the olfactory cortex. What's more, smell signals radiate to deeper regions in the brain, including the amygdala and hippocampus, areas critical for emotion and memory. One reason smells invoke such powerful feelings. Health implications. The moment we catch a whiff of garlic sizzling on a pan, oh man, olfactory neurons in our nose spring into action, sending electrical signals on a journey throughout our brains. The first stop is the olfactory sensors, where they transform into what we perceive as smell. The sensors then travel into deeper regions of the brain, and they trigger emotional responses and memories as they arrive in the amygdala and hippocampus. Although one could survive in the modern world without a sense of smell, losing can signal something more dangerous in the brain. Patients with neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's frequently struggle to detect and identify smells. These problems crop up long before their memories become impaired or develop tremors. These studies indicate deficits in smell among healthy older adults can predict later cognitive decline or Parkinson's disease. Researchers continue to explore why this happens in order to develop early diagnoses and potential new therapies aimed at underlying the cause of damage. Although the vast majority of olfactory receptors exist only in the nose, scientists have found some receptors in other tissues such as lungs, kidneys, skin, heart, muscle, colon, and brain. As a result, scientists are beginning to think that they serve not just as smell receptors, but generally chemical receptors. Sperm, for example, can use input from olfactory receptors to navigate to unfertilized eggs. In kidneys, they help mice regulate blood pressure, and lungs use olfactory receptors to detect noxious chemicals and constrict your airways. Researchers began exploring how olfactory receptors throughout the body may possibly facilitate the effects of certain drugs. The discovery of olfactory receptors opened up the window to our sense of smell, potentially leading to a better understanding of chemical signaling throughout the body. Through continued research funded by public and private institutions, scientists may find a new role for olfactory receptors, as well as new opportunities to diagnose and treat neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. I find this kind of stuff absolutely fascinating. I would have had been fun to have in biology and psychology. Yeah, I don't like other people. Okay, great. Like, thank you for telling me the people who like really paved the way, but like also tell me the people who like figured out other things too. That's basically what you're doing, System Talk. That's the whole point of them. Someone really enjoys the coffee. Fantastic, Dre. I'm really glad to hear it. If you want to read this yourself, I'm subscribed to the RSS feed, so like I get these articles like every day and I just read them. But this one was from last year and I found it interesting because it talked about how smells are a really important part of memories and emotion. So when you get a whiff of like a certain perfume that your girlfriend uses, you remember all of like the lovely things. But at the same time, if you just broke up with her and you smell that perfume, then you're remembering those things and it can be frustrating. Or if you always had a Christmas tradition of your mom cooking pineapple ham or making chocolate double fudge brownies only during Christmas and you smell those, it like feels like Christmas because of that. And it's similar to certain candles. Usually people burn ones that have like a pine or a balsam scent or something like that, usually only during Christmas or like winter. And so when those things kind of happen out of those seasons, that's how a lot of memory and emotion can be brought up when you least expect it. I have a lot of trouble with pronunciation, yes. It's because I usually